Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 300 and what are we at now? 68. Mindful Live 368. Thank you for being here. It is the 25th of the 3rd in the year of our Lord 2024. The year is well moving along, you know. It feels like, you know, the years have taken up a bit of a speedier run of late. I don't know if it's just me, but I get that kind of feeling like, you know, the years have taken up a bit of a speedier run. I'm making money and securing in non-work. Oh, well, good stuff, bro. Good stuff. Can't complain with those. Once you're on the inside, of course, people, make sure you hit that like button, double tap the screen over there on TikTok if you're wondering how to hit the like button over there. If you're looking at this on YouTube live or even on repeat, make sure you hit that like button too. Even on repeat, drop a comment, tell me what you think. If you know, sometimes when you're listening this, I know you're not necessarily watching the phone the entire time, but you know, you could take a little pause all now and hit that like button. Yep, it really does help that algorithm. JFKL says boycott B-Mobile. Why do you want to boycott B-Mobile, JFKL? Not that I'm against it necessarily. I don't like B-Mobile particularly, but my reasons may not necessarily be your reasons. So what's the reason for boycotting B-Mobile? What has B-Mobile done to you? Good night, Paul Duncan. Good night. All right. Wow, that seems troublesome. Let's jump in right into the news. Stand your ground against oppressive government. Padarat calls on Wasa workers. I told you so. So said Princess Town MP and opposition shadow minister of public utilities Barry Padarat, following confirmation on Saturday from public utilities minister Marvin Gonzalez and Water and Sewage Authority Chairman Ravindra Nanga that the state company will cut 200 positions as it restructures its labor force. In a news release yesterday, Padarat said the revelation is just the tip of what is to come at Wasa. Hey JFKL, I just wanted to make sure it's that, bro, I have been living on talk and data add-ons for years. They caught up. Like, what we gonna do, bro? And they know what they're doing, you know, and this is why I am upset with the government many of the times with this, because the government prohibits actual competition from coming in. But we don't have, but for boycotts to work best, you need competition. This is a state company. It's just the boycotts are a tough thing when the government gets involved. If there was enough competition, listen, I don't want your minutes. I don't want your texts. All I want is some gigs of data. Tell me how much I need to pay to get gigabytes of data. That's all. And they will never give you that deal. It's like the cable providers who will never give you a deal where you could select what channels you want. Sir, I do not want your 60 channel package because I only want 2 channels out of that and the other 58 are annoyances. So can I select the channels I want? Listen, the moment competition gets in, I will relish when these companies crash and die and are no more. Yes, people will lose their jobs and I'm sorry for that, but these companies deserve to die because they do not offer proper service and they have no interest in pleasing their customers. It's cruelty. It's like B-Mobile when they charge $10 a minute for a phone call or some kind of ridiculous something like that when they were the only cell providers. It's ridiculous. And these things, we're going to get into some of that, because the reason they could do some of that is because there's no competition in this business, and when they put out their models, they see that this is what we need to be profitable, because a lot of these companies are bloated in the first place. When you have inefficient, bad free market models that only work because of government quarreling in customers, then you get inefficient, bad free market companies. They don't run companies efficiently. And then we're surprised when we see these companies closing. And we're looking at Wasa here. Mr. Padarat, the shadow Minister of Public Utilities and MP for Princestown, he's saying that he told Wasa. Where's Miss Mango Pacifier? Miss Mango Pacifier is right now trying her best not to fall asleep. The cement company that was coming here the other day, that they run normal thing with them, normal thing. Yeah, but Mr. Padarat is speaking here like this is a massive revelation. Padarat is saying, listen, we have to watch out. Padarat said he has been raising the issue of coming layoffs at Wasa in the public domain for the past few months. However, Gonzalez denied this until the numbers were revealed in Parliament during the Standing Finance Committee in October of 2023. Padarat said the government took over 60 million off the books of Wasa in the area of NRS contributions, and therefore, while Gonzalez announced the middle managers were being sent home very soon, it also spelled disaster for thousands of other employees. Here's the thing though. I don't know if Mr. Padarat didn't follow all of the articles, but this isn't exactly a revelation. Yeah, JFK, they just disgusting. Listen, I saw that Starlink redid their pricing for Trinidad and Tobago. The moment it's within reasonable reach, I'm gone. I have no loyalty to these companies. Let them burn. I'm angry. I am angry. What do you mean you can't just offer people some data for money? Let me pay for what I want, for goodness sake. Let them die, the companies I'm talking about here. But this isn't a new thing that Padarat was talking about, because this story has been in and around the news for some time now. This isn't a brand new revelation. From July 30th, 2022, 2 years ago, government planning 600 million VSEP for Wasa. The board of Wasa has projected that it will cost the government 600 million to fund the VSEP for the employees of the utility, VSEP being Voluntary Separation of Employment Program. The Express was told that the transformation plan for Wasa submitted to cabinet indicated that the government considered an expenditure of 600 million for the VSEP. So it's not a strange revelation that no one knows how this ever happened. Not exactly. They were speaking about this a little while now. The cost is inclusive of 213 Wasa managers, public utilities ministers said. Now, they went into explaining why this was necessary. Wasa survives as a result of subventions from the government. Wasa chairman told the Express that in 2020, the government subsidized Wasa to the tune of $1.5 billion. In 2021, the government disbursed $1.78 billion to the company. The cost to run Wasa is about $2.5 billion annually, while its revenue is about $800 million. You're understanding that something isn't adding up there. It's 2.5 to run, it's 800 million coming in. And then we constantly wonder where the government is spending the money. Why does the government need property tax? Why are they trying to fleece the motorists on the street? Every corner you're seeing these police. They're sending out price mart grocery bills for tickets now, apparently. But the government needs to do that because some managers are sitting in Wasa collecting salary upon salary. When compared, there was a report submitted to cabinet about Wasa and its management and worker levels. When compared to the regional benchmark of 8 employees per 1,000 connections, Wasa's staff per connection ratio of 13 employees per 1,000 is unacceptably high. And this is the thing that I find so strange in politics. We have the opposition party speaking like they don't understand this. Like this is foreign stuff. They're trying to rile up Wasa workers, that Wasa workers stand up for your rights, while they understand that this is a bloated, inefficient company that is sucking like a leech from the country. So why pretend like you don't understand that this company needs to be dealt with? Why attempt to make it more difficult to handle this company? Like, don't tell the workers that they can't, they must fight for their rights and remain employed. Tell them that something needs to happen. Maybe you might think the government's idea is bad, but okay, well, propose an alternate idea. That's why you don't trust people like this. Don't trust politicians like this. A politician who watches something like Wasa, understanding that it's running on 2.5 billion, collecting $800,000, and you're telling the workers, fight for your rights, nobody must fire all they must stay employed. What? How? A March 2018 report titled Wasa Top Management Assessment by Strategic Consultants found that the utility had a headcount of 5,393. The report found that Wasa had 8 levels of leadership. Wasa has 8 levels of leadership: directors, heads, senior managers, department managers, assistant managers, section managers, unit managers, and supervisors, instead of the normal 3 to 4. You see, Fireflame says nobody works in Wasa. Dropped the form to get my name on my bill 4 years later. Bill still on previous owner name. Well, how are people going to work when there are all these levels of management? And you know what that's doing? If a company needs 4 directors and it needs 20 managers, and you force a portfolio in between director and manager to create some nebulous nonsense, the company is obviously going to start doubling its management numbers. And that's what was going on with Wasa. The normal approach is 3 levels: top, middle, and supervisory, according to the AGAD report. Again, the report said the normal is 3 levels. You have your top management, your middle management, and supervisory. Wasa had 8, more than double the levels of management and leadership out there. In total, the Wasa's top management staff is 426. It breaks this down as follows: top management 60, middle management 113, and supervision 254, said the 2018 report. So Wasa is overflowing with managers and supervisors, and still work can't get done. You know, regularly I stumble across the meme where they show you a group of Wasa workers working on a site somewhere, and 10 workers sitting outside and 1 worker in the hole doing the job. And then I think I saw an edit on that meme once where they said, and if they're firing somebody, they're going to fire the 1 worker inside the hole that's working. Well, the reason that is because all the other men on the outside are managers. That's why they are all managers. The managers don't work, obviously. The report said that on 2 previous occasions, Wasa has attempted to right-size the organization, just as JFKL was talking about with the forestry division, that those attempts are made quite regularly. It was attempted before. In spite of these efforts, the employee headcount has averaged approximately 5,000 over the period 2012 to 2017. Because people benefit from that. That's as simple as it gets. That's as simple as it gets. And, you know, how are we as a country supposed to efficiently move forward when we have state enterprises like this attached to us on all directions, on all sides? How are we? How are we? It's not only they are inefficient, they also actively work against good practices. I was reading about the insanity in Mon Diablo, to pull that one up. Ex-Wasa worker behind Mon Diablo. Behind Mon Diablo $1 million water trucking scam. The suffering of more than 5,000 residents in the rural community of Mon Diablo has come to an end as as the Public Utilities Minister has blown the lid off a multi-million-dollar water trucking racket. The residents who have been forced to purchase water for $300 a truckload, forking out between $600 and $1,800 per household per month, are breathing a sigh of relief as they are now being provided with a free supply from Wasa, while government is also working apace to complete installation of 2.4 kilometers of pipeline in the district by month end. All these employees, and they are still subcontracting work. Well, they can't get anything done because all of their employees are managers. So of course they have to subcontract it. You can't get the managers to do any work. Unscrupulous private operators, they claimed, were deliberately locking off Wasa's valves to force them to buy the essential commodity. Sunday Guardian was told that the mastermind behind the illegal operation, which existed for more than a decade, is a former Wasa worker called a turncock who turns the water supply on and off in the means. And these things, when you have a company with all those managers, you're telling me that someone could turn off the water supply for 5,000 residents and nobody knows about it? Really? Really? Nobody knows about it. And I'm sorry. Those things have to be known. Those things have to be known. That's not something that you go through and nobody ever knows anything. This is a purely hidden thing. This guy was so dastardly and sneaky and conniving that nobody could have figured out what he was doing for a decade, 10 years and more. 10 years and more. And all this running. Shad says, come Nathan, justification to restructure in the air. Good night, Rachel Glubman. Now, yeah, it is justification to restructure, but the fact is that Wasa needs restructuring. Like, okay, I understand that as politicians and governments restructure these companies, they would attempt to sneak in things that are to their benefit, but still, nonetheless, that doesn't change the fact that the current thing in its current incarnation is a weight around the country's neck. To me, there's a lot of similarity, not necessarily in Wasa and Petrotrin, because at least Petrotrin could have been profitable, but the argument is similar. And like many people argue that the Prime Minister did the wrong thing by closing Petrotrin because it could have been profitable. Maybe it could have been, but if the country would have continued running it in its unprofitable state for another 20 years, then it would have been better we just close it down and done. Trinity says no, just more confidence to afuera, everything. You get that feeling. Listen, and this is what I often talk about. People speak about privatization of things like it's so crazy and unheard of and impossible. A rural, poorer community was living with a private water supply, exorbitant and oppressive by nature. Price gouging by nature, and these poor rural people were able to live with a private supply of water for over 10 years. You telling me we can't kick out Wasa and get some private companies to privatize this whole water distribution business and we would all survive normal? But I understand that song's a step too far for a country like Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe we don't go there yet. But nonetheless, it seems obvious that this thing cannot continue as it is. Willie Bang says, my problem with the closing down of Petrotrin wasn't that in itself, but more so the non-replacement. Replacement by what? By whom? They attempted to get private buyers to buy it. That's what you do when you're trying to get out of that. So for me, I don't mind the government getting out and attempting to get private buyers to buy it. And maybe we tax the private buyers. That makes more sense than the government running this thing, because government just doesn't run it well. I wouldn't want the government to close it down and reopen another one that they create. No, not really. Left a gap. Now, it's interesting to me that they can't get private buyers either. You wonder how economically viable the business is in the first place. If it was something so economically viable, wouldn't international private buyers be lining up from the door? Like, think about these things without just the national patriotic kind of emotional attachment to some of them. Like, think of them realistically. Is it? Now, maybe if we had governments that could have moved like dynamic boardrooms and made decisions much swifter, maybe we could have done something with Guyana and worked as the refinery for Guyana's oil and all of that. But in the process of governments attempting to work that out, we'd have been losing billions of dollars. Good evening, Curvon. Talking about confusing stuff and authorities not really understanding or knowing what's going on, let's head back to the SSA, will we? 4 guns for SSA. Pastor Brown hands over high-powered weapons. 4 high-powered weapons were returned to the SSA Komoto Armory by Pastor 1 day after SSA personnel conducted an audit and evaluation of the facility on March 15th. The ghost who walks. Hey. 4 high-powered rifles. And he returned them the day after they conducted the audit, where they may have noticed them missing. The interesting thing in this is they raided brother Pastor's home before, and they didn't find these rifles, you know. They raided his home, looked at his FUL. I think it's an FUEC or something like that. They didn't find these 4 powerful ones. Good night, Kremak. Good night. On that day, SSA Security Department personnel confiscated agency-issued firearms belonging to employees from the agency's cyber unit and other departments and visited the Komoto Armory as part of their investigation. Several intelligence sources familiar with the ongoing investigation confirmed that Brown came to the facility and signed into the armory 4 weapons, 2 submachine guns, and 2 assault weapons. Two submachine guns, and 2 assault weapons. And these were beside the pistols he had when they searched his house. Listen, pastor protected by more than the Holy Spirit out there. I remember a kind of sacrilegious song Cartel sang a long time ago where he talked about Jesus Christ have 12 disciples, but he has his 24 disciples, and he went on to list his disciples being guns, etc., etc. Those of us millennials, you know, when you was listening the Cartel on the Nokia, what I was by the 5260 or something like that, blaring in the speakers and thing. You all know the tune I'm talking about. Pastor man not playing. These 4 high-powered weapons have raised questions. As intelligence sources said, when Brown initially displayed his firearm user's license for 2 pistols during the raid of his house and church, when he first showed his firearm license for 2 pistols during the raid of his house and church, he did not alert the authorities to these weapons. Where the guns were, how did he get them, and what was he doing with them? These weapons were under his control, which he never gave to the police when they raided his house and his church, said a high-ranking intelligence officer. Investigators are trying to determine the period of time Brown had the weapons and who gave instructions to issue them. The Express attempted to contact the man and they couldn't. Intelligence sources told the Express everything seemed to be in order at the armory when the audit was conducted on that Friday, March 15th. It was after the story broke and his pictures in the Express that someone saw him come to the facility and return these weapons. Apparently, someone tipped off the investigators at SSA and they came back to Komoto, said an intelligence source. So wait. They're saying that these weapons were not really the SSA's own? Because they were saying when they did the audit, y'all are listening to this, everything seemed to be in order when they did the audit. Tony the ambassador says, so that's for extra guns. Apparently these are unique, never seen before weapons. Where did he get them from? According to the source, there were 2 armories at the Komoto facility. There's one where the SSA controls and stores weapons for specialist agencies, and there's a different one for Defense Force soldiers, the source said. SSA officials and police are now trying to ascertain how the pastor was allowed to leave with not 1, but 4 high-powered weapons. The investigations revealed so far that the weapons were not SSA weapons, and therefore the SSA could not have given it to him. Bro, what? Wide Leather says SRP have 4 FULs and I can't even buy one. No, Wide Leather. You're miscounting here, Wide Leather. He has 4 high-powered rifles. He has 2 handguns beside those 4. So actually the SRP had 6. Just so you know, not 4, 6. The investigations revealed so far that the weapons were not SSA weapons and therefore the SSA could not have given it to him. The weapons were not Defense Force weapons, so therefore he could not have gotten them from the Defense Force. So where big man get the guns? Where big man get the guns? They weren't SSA weapons, they weren't Defense Force weapons, so where he got them? And let me tell you why something isn't adding up here. Why would he return them to the armory of the SSA? Wouldn't he know where he got his stash? If he knew it was not owned or belonged, it didn't belong to the SSA or the Defense Force, why would he return it to their armory? Or is it because you remember they have been doing audits into the missing ammunition. We are seeing ammunition popping up at murder scenes belonging to our regiment and our police service, but after they do their audits, they are seeing that they are noticing nothing missing. So if the audit is missing nothing when bullets are obviously ending up at murder scenes, maybe there's a way to edit these inventories to have them say exactly what you want them to say. Dane Kansas is soldier in the army of the Lord indeed. Ah! Oh yes. I am sorry, but I find it hard to believe that big man get these guns from some other source other than the SSE. Where is he? The mayor says is the real question. Well, here's the thing. If according to as the man says, he is indeed a spy, the whole idea that you'll just have him out there going about his business doing anything, can't he just disappear on you? I mean, he's a spy. He knows his stuff. Willie Bang says it's funny, but it's not. Bro, that's exactly my sentiment. Because at the end of the day, all of the jokes and the strange things about this story that we're talking about, at the end of the day, there are dead people involved. There are dead people involved. So, as funny as it might seem, alongside investigating the SSA, one of the things that that we discovered, this is the intelligence source speaking, was that when the Special Anti-Crime Unit of Trinidad and Tobago SORT was shut down, the stock of weapons fell into the hands of the SSA, and they were being handled in a very concerning way. They shut down SORT and dumped the guns on the SSA, and who knows what's going on with them. A senior police officer who has worked in several elite police units over the years shed some light on the weapons that were handed from SORT to the SSA. Under SORT, there were Heckler and Koch G36s with suppressors, MP5s with suppressors, USP 45s with suppressors, all handed over to the SSA and Special Forces. Richard Gloveman says, so these intel sources, senior at the military, just leaked to the papers. This sounding too funny. Well, the intel sources, I think, would be leaking, trying to clear some of their names to it. They're trying to leak in a direction. So part of the leak was that they said the guns didn't belong to the SSA or the Defense Force. I think that leak is leaking dirty water, in my personal opinion. I think that's not a very clean leak. The leak is attempting to leak propaganda into the waterway. But that's what the leak is attempting to do. Covenson's feeling I will download CUD tonight. White Leather, who was the commissioner who ordained him SRP? They should be making a statement. I believe it was Griffith, but I believe it was on instruction from the SSA director. So it was an instruction sent that we need this guy to be hired as an SRP, and they did. So I think a statement was made on it already. And the strange thing, as someone was just talking about, the ghost who walks can have 6 FULs apparently. But to other people, hard luck. Cop gets tongue lashing from court over FUL delay. A High Court judge has delivered a stinging rebuke to the Commissioner of Police for a delay of more than 2 years in deciding a Tobago businessman's FUL application. On March 25th, Justice Frank C. Prasad, Frankie to the rescue again. Of course, it's Mr. Frankie. Of course, sorry, Justice Frankie. Of course, it's Justice Frankie out there. Justice Frank C. Prasad chided Commissioner Erla Harewood Christopher for her unreasonably prolonged and procrastinated decision. Well, no wonder they pull Frank protection detail. Frank, this is why they pulled your protection detail. This is why they have you standing alone out here, Frankie. The delay in this matter has not been explained, cannot be justified, and it is unreasonable. The procrastination which has occurred is simply inconsistent with the obligation to prioritize and pursue the need for good and effective administration. Statutory functions must be discharged efficiently and effectively, C. Prasad said. In granting the declaration, C. Prasad ordered her to make a decision in 28 days. And she will just say no. Well, that's fine, you know, Richard Glubman. That's fine. But force her to say no, because lots of people are suing for this. This is another person, but there was a group of 12 and a group of 16 or something last week that are suing for this same reason. You see, it's the it's the thing that the red pill manosphere likes to talk about online. The lack of accountability. You see, when you never say yes and you never say no, you are always in limbo. No one could point at you and say, you have refused firearms for the country's businessmen. And this businessman applied to the commissioner last month and he was murdered this month. That's what could be said when you say no. But you see, when you say, well, we're pending, it's still pending, it's still pending, it's still pending. It's still pending. It's like, I never said no, but I didn't say yes. So it's effectively no, but without the responsibility of holding to the accountability of saying no. It's a sneaky move. And that's why I think the justice is right in calling it out. He's right. In defense of the claim, the commissioner said there was a large volume of FUL applications. The police services firearms unit also had to deal with other permits, such as firearms users, employees certificates, and firearm import permits. The commissioner's defense further said the department was severely understaffed, and from 2020 to 2021, the pandemic imposed challenges. The commissioner also maintained that 2 audits of the firearms unit also led to unanticipated delays, and relocating files to the fraud squad building was also a contributory factor. But C. Prasad said the explanations given by the commissioner were simply outrageous. Law-abiding citizens in this country are living in fear, and the unabated increase in violent crimes which involve the use of illegal firearms cannot be ignored. In fact, it appears that those intent on wreaking havoc have a ready arsenal at their disposal, while the majority of law-abiding citizens are unarmed and vulnerable. Thank you, Frankie. Thank you, Justice C. Prasad. This is obvious. Anybody with a rational mind logically looking out at the Trinidad and Tobago landscape, this becomes very apparent to you. There are criminals who obviously do not struggle having access to weapons and ammunition. And at the same time, while we live in this reality, we have a commissioner bending over backward, going to court, spending millions of dollars behind lawyers just to leave you in limbo to make sure you don't get a weapon. How does that make sense? He said the cop had said it was unfathomable to expect her to spend her days deciding on FUL applications when she has so many other issues to deal with, such as the crime rate, gun-related violence, as well as the obligation to manage human and financial resources of the service. You're hearing what the Commissioner of Police said, and Justice Frank is going to tear her to pieces over saying that. But listen carefully what the leader of our police service was quoted as saying here, that it's unfathomable to expect her to, in a timely manner, deal with FUL applications when she has other duties more serious to be concerned with. Curve on, Justice Sipasad says exactly that, but in a few more words than that. But he said there was no evidence to suggest additional duties had been added to the top cop's office. The role and functions to be discharged by the holder of this office are clearly defined and settled, and those who aspire to hold the position are deemed to be fully cognizant of the said demands. In other words, you knew what the job entailed before you applied for the job. You applied for the job knowing this was part of the portfolio. You can't come into the portfolio now. You can't get hired for the job now and say, well, this is actually too much for me. What? This is the advertised job. It is simply outrageous, the justice went on, that a sitting commissioner would elect to adopt a, well, I have plenty work to do stance in defense of the delay which has transpired in this case. He said the allure of high office was often a distraction from its onerous obligations, but aspirants must be fit for purpose, equipped and capable of addressing their obligations with sound judgment and alacrity. To suggest one core function is more important than another, he chided, was a classic cop-out, which does not inspire confidence in the office holder's capacity or capability. Incompetence or restricted ability cannot and will not be used by this court as a ground of justification when there is a delay in discharge of a duty imposed by statute. That's a pretty strong tongue lashing the commissioner got there. There's a heavy suggestion of incompetence and out of your depth. It seems like the justice implied that pretty strongly. Well, the thing is, with her contract, I do think it might be renewed, because her contract is for 3 years as commissioner. The every year part is her retirement. And as commissioner, she has told the line of her superiors about as well as could be expected. has she ever even hinted at a negative scent of a whiff of a whisper of anything in the direction of the political superiors? She seems, I do not know the lady personally, she seems to be a very obedient vessel in that position. And the loyalty seems to be repeat. All of the missteps and seeming incompetence and out of depth kind of ideas that we get about the commissioner, with all of that, we've never seen the government insinuate a negative statement towards the commissioner. And we've never seen the commissioner insinuate a negative statement towards the government. You see, these things to me are problematic. Sometimes people are like, well, we have all of our institutions functioning perfectly in unison with each other. No, sometimes when that's happening is they're cooperating to fleece you. They're cooperating against the people. I might rather Gary Griffith quarreling with Dr. Rowley every so often to make sure there's some friction between the spheres of power in our country. That might make more sense than you tell me that they're both perfectly in sync with each other while the crime rate is increasing. Like if they were perfectly in sync with each other and we had a kind of 10 murders per year scene, well, fine. But you're perfectly in sync with each other while the crime rate is increasing. Nah, something is wrong there. So I don't think that her contract will not be renewed. I don't foresee, let me put it this way. I will be surprised, legitimately. I will be surprised if come the end of her contract, she is let go. I will be surprised. And strange enough, I don't even see her resigning. I just don't see it. She seems like she is okay being the functionary in that position, and she's going to stay right there. I foresee, as long as the PNM continues, she's going to continue right there till the end of her contract. And as someone was saying, she seems anti-gun. Yes, you do get that feeling when you see these cases popping up. Ex-soldier challenges cops' decision to seize 3 guns. She seized 3 of his weapons. A former member of the Defense Force who was made a special reserve corporal assigned to the security detail for former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. Now, tell me if there isn't a tone of some kind of special victimization sounding stuff inside of here. Because he was moved out of the Defense Force, made an SRP, and put on the protection detail of Gary Griffith. So it seems like he may be seen as a loyalist to that side. He had been permitted by the High Court to challenge, the current top cop's variation of his FUL, taking back 3 weapons and leaving him with only 1. In addition to a series of declarations, Rennie also wants an order compelling the commissioner to return his Glock pistol, a 12-gauge shotgun, and rifle. Ren's judicial review claim will come up for hearing on May 3rd. He was first granted an FUL on November 13, 2018. Between September 2019 and 2021, he received variations for the rifle, shotgun, 2 pistols, and ammunition. In August 2021, he sold one of the pistols to a Coast Guard officer and applied for a firearm disposal permit. In July 2022, he was told by an officer at the Morvar police station to bring his FUL, firearms, and ammunition. He did so. The items were seized, and he was told it was on instruction from the commissioner. bring in your guns, give them to me, go home. Yes, that's our lovely commissioner. He said after various demands for an explanation, he said he was no longer pursuing his application for the disposal permit. In January 2023, he was told to visit the Chaguanas police station and was given a letter informing him of the commissioner's variation of his FUL. He was given a duplicate FUL and only his Sig Sauer pistol. So, just by the way, to find that out, he was left without any of his protection for half year. And then they return a copy of your FUL and one. Now, here's the thing. To me, and this is why I appreciate some of America's view of state and the position of the government. Because to me, that's theft. The state just stole your possessions. And I don't think the state should have a right, even if it's a weapon, to be able to take what is yours without due process. And due process involves going before a court of law. That's theft. You didn't buy the guns. He was told of the investigation by the... In April 2023, he sought information on any report on the 4 firearms and his removal from his duty at the police administration building. So not only were his firearms seized, he was kicked off of his post. No information why. Really, I am MDF 123 original? Well, feel free to exit. It's an article I'm reading, so I don't know if the article is repeating to you, but it's an article here. He was told of the investigation by the Commission on Variation and Approvals for FULs. In February, his attorneys demanded the return of his firearms and ammunition and to reverse the variation of the FUL. His lawsuit contends the continued detention of his firearms and ammunition is unlawful. It said the Commissioner cannot vary an FUL indefinitely without any intention to exercise her power. That's the present state. Violence and illegal firearms surround us. And the person in charge of allowing legal firearms to be dispersed insists no one should get. Well, I'm sure except the ministers. I haven't heard of any minister complain about being refused an FUL. More suits for the cup after this. I foresee it. I foresee that we are going to have FUL lawsuits chasing this commissioner of police continually till she exits this post. And it seems like she loses quite a few of them. Now, at the end of the day, because of the nature of the law, all they could do is insist that she actually gives an answer, because the yes or no is kind of up to her. But she's still going to be sued over and over and over again. And every time they win, they would be losing legal fees. They may lose some penalty costs here and there. They're going to be paying legal fees either way. This nonsense is going to cost the country millions of dollars. So we are paying millions of dollars to ensure that the law-abiding citizens cannot be armed while we have an illegal gun problem, because that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Jumping into the next story. an allegation I saw from one politician to another, and you know, it just raised certain thoughts in my mind on the whole thing. I actually support the UNC policy on firearms. Me too. It makes no sense at all. Willie Beng says it makes sense to the unaffected. Wide leather, a pity that Ula is not personally liable, but we the taxpayers. Well, that's the beauty of those positions, isn't it? But speaking of looking at the dysfunction regularly you see in Trinidad and Tobago, one of the things that oftentimes causes friction when you see countries that have revolutions and countries that have different levels of violence within them, one of the chief things that causes that is landlords. If you listen to communists and socialists, one of the main problems that many of them have, many of those on that further left wing side have, is with landlords. Because the idea of landlords, you could understand why people who have a care for fairness kinda don't like the idea of landlords. Landlords kinda lock in wealth with a select few. If you think of Trinidad and Tobago over, let's say, not much changes over the next 200 years, the wealthiest people and their children would continue buying up more land. Every generation of the wealthiest people would buy up a significant portion more land than every generation of the middle class. And you would just have the wealthy ownership of land increasing and increasing and increasing, until you could foresee potentially a possibility where you're in a country where basically all of the land is owned by a select wealthy few, and you are a wage slave. If you cannot own land, if there are no property rights, you can't have no property here, you are basically a wage slave, like an indentured laborer in the place. So you understand why these kinds of things regularly lead to unrest and revolution. And you know, when I look at our ruling class, regularly I see that same thing. Regularly you see that same thing. When you see the members of parliament and you eventually hear what their claim to wealth is, so often it's pretty much landlords. Mitchell denies Mark rent claim, no conflict of interest. Opposition Senator Wade Mark yesterday called on Minister of Tourism, Culture and Arts Randall Mitchell to say if he collects monthly rent from governing Pan Trinbago for space in a building at 55 Dundonald Street, Port of Spain. Mark alleged a possible conflict of interest involving Mitchell, claiming the minister became 50% owner of the building in 2021, in which Pan Trinbago appears to be paying around $70,000 monthly in rent. In an immediate response, Mitchell said while he was a partial owner of the building, at no point had he collected rent from Pan Trinbago. So Mitchell went on to explain that, you know, it was a purchase and there were previous tenants and there's no real conflict here. And his explanation, to be very honest, his explanation was pretty clear. And there doesn't seem to be a legal conflict of interest there. But nonetheless, it just highlights to me the reality. Yeah, exactly, Kevin. It just highlights to me the reality of what we live in, where so often when you hear one politician trying to poke at the other or trying to win points on the other, and they highlight what they do and what they own, you're like, but wait, we are ruled by the people who own most of the property around us, and then while ruling, they have a rental designed to ruling. Isn't that just strange? Isn't that strange? We are ruled by landlords, and our ruling class has a very rent-loving style of ruling. Such a coinky-dink. Such a quinky thing. They were pointing out that Panchinbago is an NGO basically. They're a non-government organization, although they get a lot of government money. And the government for some time has been responsible for finding dwelling places for this Panchinbago. Even if you're saying this company isn't, the money that they're paying for rent doesn't directly come from the government necessarily, the fact that they need the rent is partially because of the government. Because in case you all didn't know, there's a massive Panchinbago building at the side of the highway going up to Trin City there that has been standing there, probably being a home for goanna and snake for over a decade now. An article here from Carnival 2011. Panchinbago gets $7 million to finish its headquarters. Guardian 2011. Prime Minister Kamla Prasad Bisesa says government has allocated $7 million for the completion of Panchinbago's headquarters in Trin City. Construction of the facility had been delayed for years. The Prime Minister made the announcement on Tuesday during her visit to Petro-Trin Phase 2, Pan Grove, Panyard, Woodbrook. In our last administration, I was the Minister of Legal Affairs and I had control of the lands registry, and I was given that blessing to give to Panchinbago the lands for the Pan headquarters. That was more than 10 years ago, and this article is more than 10 years ago. And Panchinbago is right now renting from a company partially owned by the Culture Minister. So isn't it convenient that all of these landlords have no idea how to build a house, how to build a building for 30 years? That's convenient, isn't it? Nearly 30 years and they just don't know how you build buildings. A building cannot finish. Listen, if you pump $70,000 per month into construction at that building, it would be done probably within the next 2 years or so. Crispin Nicholas asks what happened to the 7 million given. Here's another article coming up in time. This is from 2016. After the People's Partnership left, after the promise of that 7 million, the empty, unfinished house in a field. Panchinbago's signature on the national landscape is the dilapidated shell of a concrete and steel in Trin City that represents its failed effort at constructing a national headquarters. As with so many projects that Panchinbago has overseen, nobody seemed able then or since to explain why millions of dollars allocated to the construction of the building led to nothing at all. So they can't build a building, but they know how to rent. All the money for building the building disappeared. But that money to rent still there though. Like I wonder, with modern technology, some of these places, if they even need a building. Like Panchinbago could exist as a website only. Why? What Panchinbago needs an office for? You all work from home. And when you need to do an event, you plan the event. What you need your office for? All the files stored online. I know when you have money, you're looking to buy, not rent. Yeah, that's when you have money. But when the government has money and you want the money from the government, you want the government to rent from you. That's the way it goes. That's why people like to be buddies with that's why people like to be buddies with politicians and the government. There is benefit to it. And there's disadvantage when you're no longer buddies. State to pay Inshan Ishmael $0.83 million for work on police vehicles. Businessman Inshan Ishmael will receive in a week the outstanding money owed to him. The outstanding money the state owes to him for vehicle maintenance work his company, RC, did for the police service. This comes after attorneys for the police service admitted Ishmael was owed at least $8.83 million. Yet, in January, the state in defense of Ishmael's claim said there were no police records showing any contract between ROC and the TTPS. What? During the period 2018 to 2021, there are no records of there having been any contract or contracts between the claimant and the defendant for the provision of vehicular maintenance services. The defendant avers that there was no valid and enforceable and or no contract in existence between the claimant and defendant. That's what the state said, January. And now, Ishmael had sued the state to recover the money owed to him. However, after a parallel Freedom of Information request to the police service, it was admitted he was owed $834,405 and some cents. What is that? How is this even allowed? How are you telling me the state said, we have no evidence, we owe you money? And after a Freedom of Information request, it is revealed they have the record of them owing you money. Isn't that the state attempting to defraud you? That sounds very fraudy. How are you going to tell me you have no evidence, you owe me money, and the only time I could find out that you actually owe me is if I sue you, get a Freedom of Information request gone through, and then and only then is when you would admit it? That is insane. And I wonder if Mr. Ishmael was in the really good graces of the powers that be, if things like this would have been a struggle. Are you telling me you're going through all of this for 0.83 million? Like, I mean, 830,000 is a lot of money. But on the government's level, that's not that much money. Jiggles says, no, it means one arm isn't aware of the other. That doesn't add up to me, Jiggles. Let me tell you why that doesn't add up to me. If someone comes to my home, knocks on the gate, and tells me, oh, Nathan, your wife bought some beef from me, boy. Your wife bought some beef from me, boy. You owe me 100. What's the first thing I do? Not ask my wife? How am I going to tell the man, no, I don't owe you anything, and there's no evidence I ever owed you a thing, and that you ever sold me or my family anything? How am I going to tell you that and I never even looked? If I tell you that without looking, and then it's found out afterwards that indeed I did owe you, you can't tell me, whoops, it's just that I wasn't aware of what the other side was. No, it's obvious, you have to find out. If I tell you X person owes me, you don't tell me no, they don't owe you without looking to see if they owe you first. The one arm unaware isn't a good enough excuse in this case. It just doesn't work. Something seems like purposeful, like someone purposefully acted in a negative way, in bad faith inside of this. A contract was shown in the Freedom of Info. Well, after the request was made was when the lawyers for the police admitted it. So I don't know if they showed a receipt. I don't know if they showed a contract. They said it was admitted. They didn't say how the admission was made, whether a contract was produced or not. But I presume whatever was revealed was serious and legally binding enough that they had to admit it, because they were willing to go to court to not pay him. So, strange stuff. Strange stuff, at least to me. Very strange. Hey, you all see, you all saw the same thing we were talking about. When was that? Friday? The guy from UNC that was attempting to, you know, push for something extra, attempting to force an internal poll. And I was like, I don't understand where this is coming from, because as far as I could see, I don't see him having that kind of groundswell of support. He stepped out there and it seemed like all branches of the UNC basically went to him and tell him, sit back down. That seems about what I figured. Mark slams Parry. Mayaro UNC executive blanks Parry. Senators close ranks around Pusad Bisesa. Basically, every person who has a UNC next to their name officially said, we don't know anything about what's going on with what that man said. They distance themselves, everyone. We know nothing about that. No. We are clueless. This whole internal squabbling business. Anita Haynes' response was kinda sick. Did I read her response? And you know, I was reading this heliport case where the Venezuelan migrant got the 2.4 million, and I find it ridiculous. Like, when I read a bit more into the case, I find it ridiculous. They basically said the problems were he didn't get the best food, which is true of many other people in the system. The heliport had some overcrowding, which is a problem his mother created by bringing him illegally here. And then the third issue was he was exposed to sexually explicit behavior. When you read it, it seems to suggest that his parent and guardians and the adults around him were the ones who exposed him to that behavior. How is your community exposing you to explicit behavior now grounds for 2.4 million from Trinidad and Tobago? And then the mother that brought him here illegally and that exposed him to the explicit behavior is now suing the state also. Look at the names of the lawyers who keep shoveling money out of our treasury into Venezuelan migrants on technicalities of foolish laws that we signed on to with this United Nations and globalist nonsense. Listen, I know many people mightn't like this and it could sound like you're against human rights and stuff, but the world is a cruel place. I do not think we have a responsibility for everyone in an unfortunate circumstance everywhere in the world. I just don't think that is true. This boy and his mother came here. We sent them back. They came back again illegally. Do you think the government has done anything good in their tenure? I am genuinely asking. Yes. Yes, they have done some good, yes. But that's a difficult question, because as a statement I've said so long ago in explaining my views on government and why it's so difficult for the government to do anything. Nearly anything the government does is problems. Governments are so powerful. It's like the example I drew is like Gulliver's Travels. I don't know any of you who, if any of you know that story, a book of old. It's like a giant in a land of little people. Curvon says our Venezuelan family, they say there's a Chavista attitude of entitlement we don't understand from some Venezuelans. I believe that because there was recently a video that went viral with a Venezuelan explaining how to game the US squatters, the US squatters rights system, and the kind of verve he gave to going and taking over someone else's place. And sometimes when I hear Mrs. Yesenia and the kind of tone that you hear them speaking of, like you must, and it is our right to be entitled to, that sounds very strange to me. Sounds very strange to me. A very strange thing. But yeah, as I was saying about governments are so large. It's like a giant in the land of little people. So if you ask a giant, think of the government as a 300-foot tall Godzilla moving around the country. If you ask the government to come into your yard and pick a flower for you, yeah, they may come and pick a flower, but they may break down your wall and mash up your bridge, attempting to get their big, massive fingers in between to pinch that. And that's the nature of government. When government gets involved in something, they are so big and powerful that when the government does just about anything the government does, it's going to have some kind of negative fallout because it's just so big and powerful. That's why many libertarians and anarchists and those kind of people have a view of a small government doing as little as possible and closest to the people as possible. Because when you have those massive, gigantic, powerful governments, you regularly end up with these kind of issues. The government decides, oh, well, there are too many flies in Port of Spain, so we're going to buy a chemical and spray Port of Spain and get rid of all the flies. And they do that, and there is mass death of frogs throughout the suburbs of Port of Spain, and you end up with a frog plague of dead frogs through the community or something like that. There are many negative fallouts to actions by the government. So asking if the government did something good is a strange question in that sense, but of course they did some good. Anil says the government hates us, everything they do just making life harder for citizens, but who benefiting? I don't actually believe that our government hates us. I don't actually believe that. I think for a lot of the cases, for most governments, is just what I said. The size of the government. That a giant doesn't need to hate you to mash up your entire life. They just need to not consider you enough. That's all. They just don't consider you enough. That's all it is. And the problem is many people are introduced to politics with the idea that these are the people who are going to help you and are going to see about your interests. These are the people that have your best interests at heart. The PNM did well to stabilize fiscal policy from 2015 to 2020. They decreased the spending in the budget. That's a good thing. The budgets went down. Smithy says, you know what I want to know? How they reached here illegal and they then say they were illegally detained. Well, because there's a legal way to detain illegal immigrants, I guess. There's always been that back in the time when the media was against the US president, it created a furor, but the media is with the current US president, so you don't see much of it now. But the whole kids in cages bacchanal from about 5 years back, if any of you recall, where they were separating kids and putting them in cages, oh my goodness. But if a stranger walks with a child into your country, you don't know if that's even the child's parent. You have to separate them to figure out what's going on. It's just the reality of the world that we live in. It's the reality of the world that we live in. Anyway, people, that's all I have for now. Are there any further comments or questions on the inside? Let's check in over there on YouTube. Anybody over there on the YouTube live? Nope. Because it was a weight on our country, HY, because it was taking money from the country every year. That's how as simple to look at it. And yeah, you could say could have been profitable, but could. All in all, Dev says we have a PM who is a stranger to the truth, a pathological liar, as averse to which other candidate? Do you think Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is a truth teller? Do you consider her a truth teller? Do you consider the group of people with the lawyers that are currently representing and suing Trinidad and Tobago, the national coffers, for millions of dollars for foreign nationals? Do you think they are the best group to run this country? So, like, the pathological liar and all of that, maybe, but that's the nature of the game they're all in. We have to choose from a group of liars. Dev, I'll be very interested to know how you came up with that percentage. That would be a very curious percentage to figure out. How did that percentage come up? But I think regularly a problem we have is short memories. Short memories. Many of us forgot the previous governments. Many of us forget the public figures that still talk to us and speak like, you know, they are paragons of integrity all over social media, hyping themselves, lauding themselves, putting themselves up on pedestals, saying that they are the ones. People forget, and that's the problem. You need to not forget. Has anything gotten better in the last 7-8 years? That's a strange question, but yes. Better in what context? Like in 8 years. Here's why that's a strange question. Funny, Dev. Here's why that's a strange question. In the last 8 years, I went from young adult into kind of more proper adult. So you'd assume that at least my salary would increase. So my income would increase. So things did get better. But yeah, I could have made more money with each progressing year. But that doesn't mean that the government was governing properly. Like, I know some people who during the pandemic, they hit up on some niche markets and they made bank. Bank. But that's not to say that because things got better for them over that period of time, that it was a governmental thing. So when you ask, has anything gotten better? That's a strange question. In what sense? And with what environmental factors? Yeah. I hope you understand the idea of what I'm saying there. It's a hard thing to say like that. To say what improved so clearly. Strange question, and that's a strange answer. Truthfully, no. No, I just gave the answer. How could you tell me nothing improved in my life? Crispin Nicholas, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You cannot tell me that nothing improved for me. That's insane. That's not right. I could tell you that in the last 8 years, things improved greatly for me. Improved because of the pandemic? No, not just the pandemic. Things improved before the pandemic. Since 2015, things have been steadily improving for me. That's not a statement on the capability of the government. It's just a statement saying the question is a strange question. How about for the majority? Well, Willie Beng, that's a question you have to ask. Has things improved for the majority economically? Again, if you look statistically, the models are saying Trinidad had pretty good economic comparative progress in the last couple of years. Well, Crispin Nicholas, that's what I was saying through my work. I was talking about your country crime laws policies, not you are right, Anil Pancham. And if you're asking crime, no, there has been no improvement in crime in the last couple of years. Policies, there has been some improvement in policies. They changed the dress code policy in some of those public buildings. Let me see, policies, we're looking for policies. There have been quite a few agricultural incentives that have added benefit, have added quite a bit of benefit. There have been grants that many people have accessed that have provided some benefits. This NEDCO, the Entrepreneurial Development Company, has provided quite a bit of grants to many young business entrepreneurs. That has improved a lot of their lives. Like, I mean, there are things. And anytime you find yourself saying that a government did nothing good, they never do anything good, you're captured and you need to pull back. You're in too close and you need to pull back. There's no government that never did nothing good. You're already in too deep. Stop listening morning panchite, pull back from I-95 and their in-depth PNM stories. You need to pull yourself back. Pull yourself back a little bit. You're in too deep and they have you. If you're on that side, they never do nothing good. If that's your trigger, if that's your reflex reaction, think that to yourself. I always remember when was that? 2010. I think I asked that question on was that 2010 or 2015? One out of those elections. I asked, can supporters of each party give a positive statement or something good that the opposing party has done? And if I go back and find that status, it's telling, because all supporters of the party basically just insulted their opposing party, trying to say positive things, and it tells you you are captured. You are under ideological capture. You are not thinking this through logically. It's not like you saw evidence and made a decision based on that. No, you are in a team and you are supporting based on team. Crispin Nicholas says, I'm waiting for a farmer's grant since before COVID. I'm a registered farmer with all my legal docs. So I don't know what to say about that, because I know someone who's a registered farmer and they seem to get that, I know for sure, they got that grant lickety split. And it's not like they were PNM loyal. In fact, it was vice versa. They're very anti-PNM, but they're taking that farmer's grant nonetheless. Thanks, Ariel. Thanks. All right, people. That's all I have for now. Maybe Crispin Nicholas, no doubt about that. It might be somebody, you know how Trinidad runs on that sense. I don't doubt it at all. That's all I have for now, people. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful Live. I am Nathan Spring. I'll be here again tomorrow night, starting around that 9:30 p.m. time. Until then, people, I Hope that you hold it down. Stay well. Stay safe. Well, Anil, you could jump in, bro.